There was a time in my life when silence felt heavier than failure. Not the peaceful silence you feel early in the morning, but the kind of silence that appears when someone asks you a simple question in English, and your mind freezes. Your throat tightens, and the only answer you can give is nothing. I remember sitting in a small classroom, surrounded by students who seemed confident, fast, and fearless. Their words moved smoothly. Their sentences sounded natural. Even their mistakes sounded confident. And then there was me. I knew words. I knew grammar rules. I had read books. I had watched videos. I had memorized sentences. But when the moment came to speak, everything disappeared. My mouth stayed closed. My heart beat faster. And silence won again. If you are listening to this right now, maybe you know this feeling too. Maybe you understand English, but speaking feels impossible. Maybe words exist in your mind, but they never reach your lips. Maybe you are tired of saying, "I understand, but I cannot speak." And if that is true, then this story is your story. Because today, I will tell you how I trained my mouth. Step by step. Day by day. From complete silence to natural fluency. Without pausing. Without fear. Without running away from conversations. But this journey did not begin with confidence. It began with embarrassment. The day silence hurt the most. One afternoon, I was invited to a small meeting. Nothing serious. Just a simple discussion. A few people. A few questions. I told myself, today I will speak. Today I will not stay silent. The meeting started. People introduced themselves in English. Their voices were calm. Their sentences were simple. Nothing difficult. Then it was my turn. All eyes looked at me. My mind searched for words. My heart started racing. My hands felt cold. I opened my mouth. And nothing came out. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Someone smiled politely to help me. Someone looked away to reduce the pressure. Someone waited patiently. But inside me, a storm had already begun. Finally, I said only one sentence. My name is... And then silence returned. That night, I could not sleep. Not because of the meeting, but because of the truth I finally accepted. I was not afraid of English. I was afraid of speaking. And that realization changed everything. The question that changed my life. Lying awake in the dark, I asked myself a simple question. If children can learn to speak, why can't I? Children don't know grammar. They don't memorize vocabulary lists. They don't fear mistakes. They just speak again and again. Until speaking becomes natural. And in that quiet moment, I understood something powerful. Fluency is not built in the brain first. Fluency is trained in the mouth. That sentence became the beginning of my transformation. I stopped searching for perfect methods. I stopped waiting for confidence. I stopped hiding behind books. Instead, I made one small decision. I will train my mouth every single day. No matter how uncomfortable it feels. And that decision changed my future. The first day of training. The next morning felt strange. There was no classroom. No teacher. No audience. Just me. A mirror. And silence. I looked at my reflection and said softly, "Hello." The words sounded weak. Uncertain. Almost foreign. But for the first time, I did not judge myself. I repeated it. "Hello, hello, hello." Then a simple sentence. "My name is." Again and again. Slowly. Clearly. Patiently. At first, it felt foolish. Embarrassing. Pointless. But something unexpected happened after 10 minutes. The words felt easier. Not perfect. Not fluent. But possible. And that small feeling of possibility was stronger than months of silent studying. That day, I spoke to the mirror for 20 minutes. Nothing magical happened. No sudden fluency. No dramatic change. But one invisible wall finally cracked. For the first time in years, I had spoken English without running away. The rule I followed every day. From that morning, I created one simple rule. No day without speaking. Even if I felt tired. Even if I felt embarrassed. Even if I had nothing to say. I would still speak. For 10 minutes. 20 minutes. Sometimes only 5. Because I realized something important. You don't become fluent by thinking in English. You become fluent by moving your mouth in English. Again, and again, and again. Until silence disappears. Days passed. Then weeks. At first, progress was invisible. But slowly. Very slowly. Words began to come faster. Sentences became smoother. Pauses became shorter. Fear became quieter. And one evening, something unexpected happened. I spoke a full sentence without stopping to translate. That moment lasted only a few seconds. But inside me, it felt like freedom. What you must understand before fluency begins. If you remember only one idea from this story, remember this. Silence is not your enemy. Avoiding practice is. Most learners wait to feel ready. They wait for perfect grammar. They wait for confidence. But confidence is not the beginning of speaking. Speaking is the beginning of confidence. The day you accept imperfect words is the day fluency quietly begins. And my journey was only getting started. Because soon, I would discover the most powerful training method that turns slow sentences into natural speech. And when that happened, silence would never control me again. For many days, nothing dramatic happened. I kept speaking to the mirror. I kept repeating small sentences. I kept forcing my mouth to move. Even when my mind felt empty. Progress was slow. Almost invisible. Like trying to watch a plant grow in real time. And honestly, there were moments when I wanted to quit. Because a quiet voice inside me kept saying, Maybe this is useless. Maybe you will never speak fluently. Maybe English is only for confident people, not for you. That voice sounded real. Powerful. Convincing. But one evening, something unexpected happened. And that moment changed the direction of my training forever. The sentence that opened my eyes. I was watching a simple interview online. Nothing complicated. Just two ordinary people talking in natural English. No difficult vocabulary. No complex grammar. Just flow. But suddenly, I noticed something strange. They were not speaking perfectly. They paused. They repeated words. They corrected themselves. They used simple sentences. And yet, they sounded confident. Comfortable. Free. That moment hit me like lightning. All this time, I was waiting to become perfect before speaking. But real speakers were not perfect. They were simply unafraid of mistakes. And in that quiet realization, a new truth appeared in my mind. Fluency is not perfect English. Fluency is relaxed English. That single idea changed my training completely. The second level of practice. The next morning, I stopped doing only mirror speaking. Instead, I tried something new. I pressed the voice recorder on my phone and started talking. At first, my voice sounded strange. Unnatural. Uncomfortable. I didn't like listening to it. In fact, I almost deleted the recording immediately. But then I remembered my new rule. Growth lives inside discomfort. So I listened carefully. And for the first time, I noticed my real problem. It was not vocabulary. It was not grammar. It was pausing too much. My sentences looked like this. I went to the market and I buy some food. Too many stops. Too many breaks. Too much fear between words. That day, I understood something powerful. Fluency is not about big words. It is about smooth connection between small words. So I created a new exercise. And this exercise became the turning point of my journey. The no-pause training. The rule was simple. Speak for 2 full minutes. Without stopping. No matter what happens. Grammar mistakes? Allowed. Wrong words? Allowed. Repeating ideas? Allowed. Only one thing was not allowed. Silence. The first attempt was terrible. My brain felt empty after 10 seconds. My heart started racing again. I wanted to stop. But I forced myself to continue. Even if I had nothing meaningful to say. I kept speaking simple lines like, I am trying to speak. I don't know what to say. But I will continue speaking. Because I want to improve. It sounded childish. But something magical was happening inside my brain. For the first time, I was training flow, not perfection. And after a few days, 2 minutes became easier. Then 3. Then 5. And one evening, I spoke for 10 minutes continuously. No long pauses. No freezing. Just movement. That night, I felt a quiet happiness I had never felt before. Because for the first time, fluency felt real. The fear begins to shrink. Something strange happens. When you face fear every day, it doesn't disappear suddenly. It doesn't explode and vanish. It simply shrinks quietly. Week by week, I noticed changes. My tongue moved faster. My thoughts organized quicker. My breathing stayed calm while speaking. But the biggest change was invisible. I was no longer afraid of hearing my own English. And that freedom is the true beginning of fluency. Because the moment you stop judging yourself, your voice finally becomes natural. The day I spoke without preparing. One afternoon, a stranger asked me a simple question in English. No warning. No preparation. No time to think. Just a normal, real-life moment. In the past, this situation would destroy my confidence. But this time, something different happened. Words came out automatically. Not perfect. Not beautiful. But smooth. Alive. Continuous. I answered. And the conversation continued. 2 minutes. Then 3. And suddenly, I realized I was speaking without fear, without translation, without silence. The conversation ended quickly. The stranger probably forgot it in seconds. But for me, it was a life-changing victory. Because years of quiet frustration had finally started turning into sound. The truth most learners never hear. If you are still silent in English, listen carefully to this truth. You don't need more grammar books, more vocabulary lists, more complicated lessons. You need daily fearless speaking. Even alone. Even imperfectly. Even with mistakes. Because language is not learned by understanding. Language is learned by using. And the mouth learns only when it moves. What comes next? By this point in my journey, silence was no longer controlling me. But fluency still felt fragile. Because speaking alone in a room is very different from speaking in the real world. And soon, I would face the next big challenge. Talking to real people without losing confidence. That step was the hardest of all. And it would test everything I had learned so far. But it would also unlock a new level of freedom I had never imagined. Speaking alone in a room feels safe. There is no judgment, no interruption, no eyes watching your mistakes. Inside that quiet space, confidence slowly grows, like a small flame protected from the wind. But the real world is not quiet. And sooner or later, every learner must step outside and test their voice in reality. I knew that moment was coming. And honestly, I was afraid of it. Because deep inside, one question kept repeating in my mind. What if I try to speak and everything disappears again? The first step outside comfort. I decided to start small. Not a big speech. Not a long conversation. Just one simple sentence to a real person. That was the mission. The next day, I went to a place where English conversations happen naturally. A small cafe, quiet, ordinary. But to me, it felt like a battlefield. My heart started beating faster. Even before I reached the counter, my mind began its old game again. Stay silent. Don't embarrass yourself. You are not ready. For a few seconds, I almost listened to that voice. But then another voice appeared. Calm, slow, but powerful. If not today, then when? I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and spoke. One coffee, please. Just 4 simple words. Nothing special. Nothing impressive. But for me, it felt like climbing a mountain. Because this time, I did not whisper. I did not freeze. I did not escape into silence. I spoke. And the world did not end. The power of tiny victories. Most people wait for a big success to feel confident. But real confidence is built from very small wins. That one sentence in the cafe changed something inside me. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. The next day, I tried again. A short question. A simple thank you. A quick reply. Each moment lasted only seconds. But each moment was breaking years of fear. And slowly, the outside world began to feel less dangerous. When mistakes finally happened, for a few days, everything went smoothly. Too smoothly. And then, the mistake arrived. I was talking to someone, and suddenly used the wrong word. The sentence sounded strange. Confusing. Unclear. The other person paused and asked me to repeat. In the past, this exact moment would destroy my confidence completely. My face would become hot. My mind would go blank. And silence would return. But this time, something different happened. Instead of running away, I smiled, took a breath, and tried again with simpler words. And you know what? The conversation continued normally. No one laughed. No one judged. No disaster happened. That moment taught me one of the most important truths of my entire journey. Mistakes are not the enemy. Fear of mistakes is the enemy. And the day you stop fearing mistakes, your fluency grows faster than ever. The confidence shift. Weeks passed. Short conversations became normal. Simple English started flowing naturally. But the biggest change was invisible to others. Inside my mind, a quiet transformation was happening. I was no longer thinking, can I speak? Now I was thinking, what should I say next? This is the moment when a learner becomes a speaker. Not when grammar becomes perfect, but when fear stops controlling the voice. The conversation that changed everything. One evening, I met someone new. A real conversation began. Not one sentence. Not 2 minutes. But long, natural, continuous talking. At first, I was careful. Slow. Observing every word. But after a few minutes, something unbelievable happened. I forgot to be afraid. Words started coming. Without translation. Ideas connected. Without effort. Sentences formed. Without stopping. Time passed quickly. And when the conversation finally ended, I realized something shocking. I had spoken English for almost 30 minutes. Not perfectly, but confidently, comfortably, freely. In that quiet moment after goodbye, I felt something I had never felt before. Not excitement, not pride, but peace. Because the long war between silence and speech was finally ending. The truth about fluency. Most people believe fluency arrives suddenly, like a switch turning on, like magic, like one perfect day. But real fluency arrives quietly, hidden inside hundreds of small efforts, thousands of imperfect sentences, and many moments when you continue speaking, even while feeling afraid. Fluency is not a gift. It is a decision repeated daily. A new challenge appears. Just when I thought the hardest part was over, life prepared another test. Because speaking in friendly situations is only one level. The real challenge is this. Can you stay confident when people doubt you, ignore you, or underestimate you? That lesson was waiting ahead, and it would push my confidence to a completely new level. Confidence feels strong when everything around you is calm, when people are kind, when conversations are easy, when no one is judging you. But real confidence is not tested in comfortable moments. Real confidence is tested when the world becomes difficult, when voices become louder, when doubt returns again. And that moment was waiting for me. The day everything felt small again. One afternoon, I entered a place full of fluent English speakers. They were talking fast, laughing naturally, using words I had never heard before. For a second, my old fear came back. A quiet whisper inside my mind said, "You don't belong here." That sentence was dangerous. Because it sounded familiar. Because it sounded true. Because it was the same voice that had kept me silent for years. My confidence suddenly felt small, fragile, uncertain. And I had two choices again. Stay quiet or stay present. Choosing presence over perfection. In the past, I would escape silently, pretend to check my phone, avoid eye contact, wait for the moment to leave. But this time, I did something different. I stayed. Not because I felt brave, but because I refused to go back to the old silence. I reminded myself quietly. You are not here to impress. You are here to grow. That single thought changed everything. Because when you stop trying to look perfect, you finally allow yourself to become real. The slow entry into conversation. Minutes passed. I listened carefully. Not to understand every word, but to feel the rhythm of speaking. Then someone looked at me and asked a simple question. Nothing complicated. Nothing difficult. Just a normal human moment. My heart beat faster. But this time, fear did not control me. I answered slowly. Clearly. Honestly. The sentence was simple. But it was enough. And something surprising happened. The conversation continued. Naturally. Peacefully. As if my fear had never existed. Understanding a powerful truth. That evening taught me one of the most important lessons of my entire journey. People are not waiting to judge your English. Most people are simply waiting to understand you. And when your intention is clear, your grammar becomes less important. Your accent becomes less important. Your fear becomes less powerful. Because communication is not about perfection. It is about connection. The moment of silent pride. When I returned home that night, I did not celebrate loudly. There was no big victory. No dramatic success. But inside, something felt different. For the first time in my life, I was not afraid of English-speaking environments. I was not perfect. I was not fluent like a native speaker. But I was free from silence. And that freedom felt more valuable than perfect grammar ever could. Growth becomes invisible. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And slowly, English stopped feeling like a foreign language. It became a natural part of my daily life. I watched without subtitles. I thought in simple sentences. I responded without panic. The biggest change was this. I stopped noticing my progress. Because real growth does not always feel dramatic. Sometimes it feels quiet, normal, almost invisible. Until one day, you look back and realize you are no longer the same person, facing one final fear. Even after all this progress, one small fear still remained. Speaking in front of many people. A real audience. Real attention. Real pressure. This was different from cafes and small conversations. This was exposure. This was vulnerability. This was truth. And life gave me the exact opportunity I was secretly afraid of. I was asked to speak in front of a group. Not perfectly. Not professionally. Just speak. The night before the speech. That night, sleep did not come easily. Old doubts returned again. What if you forget words? What if your voice shakes? What if people don't understand you? Fear tried one last time to bring me back to silence. But something inside me was stronger now. A calm voice whispered, "You are not the same person anymore." And for the first time, I believed it. Stepping into the light. The next day arrived. My name was called. All eyes turned toward me. The room became quiet. For a brief second, time felt frozen. This was the moment where the old silent version of me and the new confident version of me met face to face. And then I began to speak. Slowly, clearly, honestly. Not perfect English, but real English. Not a perfect speaker, but a fearless learner. Sentence after sentence, breath after breath. The fear started disappearing, and something beautiful replaced it. Joy. The real meaning of fluency. When the speech ended, people clapped politely. But the real victory was not their applause. The real victory was this. I was no longer afraid of my own voice. That is the true meaning of fluency. Not fast speaking. Not perfect grammar. Not a foreign accent. Fluency means your thoughts can travel from your heart to your mouth without fear stopping them. And in that moment, I understood something powerful. Silence had taught me patience. Practice had given me strength. But courage had given me freedom. The beginning of something greater. You might think, this is the end of the journey. But the truth is, this was only the beginning. Because once you learn to speak without fear, a bigger question appears. What will you do with your voice now? And the answer to that question would change my life forever. There is a strange moment that comes after fear disappears. It is quiet, almost invisible, easy to miss. Because for so long, your dream was simple. I just want to speak English without fear. And now, you can. So a new question slowly appears. What comes next? The silence after victory. The day after my speech, life looked normal again. The same streets, the same people, the same routine. Nothing outside had changed. But inside, everything was different. Because the biggest transformation is not visible to the world. It happens quietly. Inside your thoughts. Inside your confidence. Inside the way you see yourself. For the first time in my life, I was not chasing fluency anymore. I was living it. A realization that changed everything. One evening, while sitting alone in silence, a simple but powerful thought arrived. If learning English changed my life, maybe my story can change someone else's life too. That idea felt small at first. Almost impossible. Who was I to teach anyone? I was not a perfect speaker. Not a teacher. Not special. Just someone who refused to stay silent. But sometimes that is enough. Understanding the true meaning of learning. For years, I believed English was the final goal. Better pronunciation. Better grammar. Better vocabulary. But now I could see clearly. English was never the destination. It was only the bridge. A bridge to confidence. A bridge to expression. A bridge to a bigger life. And suddenly, my journey was no longer just about me. It became about sharing. The first time I helped someone else. One day, someone asked me a simple question. How did you learn to speak without fear? I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I had never explained it before. Then slowly, I shared my story. The silence. The struggle. The small daily practice. The mistakes. The courage to continue. When I finished speaking, their eyes looked different. Not impressed. Not amazed. Hopeful. And in that moment, I understood something beautiful. Your pain becomes powerful when it helps another person heal. When your voice stops being about you. After that day, more people started asking questions. Not about perfect grammar, but about confidence. About fear. About believing in themselves. And every time I shared honestly, I felt something growing inside me. Not pride. Not ego. Purpose. Because the greatest use of your voice is not to prove you are strong. It is to remind someone else that they are not weak. Looking back at the silent version of me, sometimes I still remember the old days. The quiet classrooms. The fear of speaking. The feeling of being invisible. And instead of sadness, I feel gratitude. Because without that silence, I would never understand the value of a voice. Without that fear, I would never discover courage. Without that struggle, I would never find purpose. A message directly for you. If you are listening right now, maybe your story feels similar. Maybe you are still silent. Still afraid. Still waiting for the right time. So let me tell you something honestly. There is no perfect time. There is only a brave decision. The day you decide to speak one imperfect sentence. That day, your new life begins. Not when you become perfect. Not when fear disappears completely. But when you say, I will not stay silent anymore. The truth most people never learn. Many people study English for years, but never feel confident. Do you know why? because they try to be perfect before they allow themselves to be real. But fluency is not born from perfection. It is born from permission. Permission to make mistakes. Permission to sound simple. Permission to continue anyway. The moment you give yourself that permission, fear loses its power. What fluency really means? Let me tell you the truth. No textbook explains. Fluency is not speed. Fluency is not accent. Fluency is not difficult words. Fluency is freedom. Freedom to express an idea. Freedom to share a feeling. Freedom to be understood. And the most beautiful part? This freedom is possible for anyone, including you. The final transformation. Today, when I speak English, I don't feel nervous anymore. But the real victory is deeper than that. I no longer feel small. Because language is not just about words. It is about identity. And when you find your voice, you also find yourself. One last truth before we say goodbye. If you remember only one thing from this entire journey, remember this. Confidence is not something you wait for. Confidence is something you build. Every time you speak despite fear. Small sentences. Small courage. Small daily steps. These small things create a powerful life. The ending that is actually a beginning. This story sounds like an ending. But in reality, it is a beginning. Because now, it is your turn. Your silence. Your practice. Your courage. Your voice. And maybe one day, you will tell your own story to someone who feels exactly like you feel today. And in that moment, your struggle will become someone else's hope. Not perfectly. Not loudly. Just honestly. I am not afraid anymore. My voice matters. I can speak. I will continue. This is only the beginning.